All right, everyone, welcome to the Mouthful with Marcus. Today we are diving into the world of Daen Kelly, one of the most popular social media cooking creators in Australia, known well for her ASMR, garlic and olive oil related content. With over 4.5 million followers across her platforms, Daen has built a fruitful career out of her cooking and has even published her own cookbook. So today we're going to hear a little bit about her story and hopefully gather some tips on what she's learned along the way. Daen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I'm in Melbourne right now, guys, obviously from Adelaide. Melbourne, this is the food capital of Australia. What's it like living here?
I love living in Melbourne because I'm originally from Brisbane, and I think I've been in Melbourne for over 9 years now. It's getting close to the 10-year mark. And the reason I moved here was because of the culture here. We've got the best arts, the best entertainment, and the best food, of course.
Every corner, obviously, I like to think Adelaide's quite good for food. And I remember the first few times I went to Sydney, I was like, wow, this is awesome. But Melbourne, at first I was like, nah, it's Gotham City. I hate this place. But the more I come back, the more I'm like, wow, the culture here is strong. Everyone, you can see the hospo life. Everything's open late. There's food everywhere. It's
not a pretty city, but, for what we lack in beauty, we've got that amazing food and that amazing entertainment scene.
And you're part of that culture. Speaking of this podcast, why do I say speaking of like that had anything to do with what we're about to talk about? I want to use this podcast to give the audience a chance to learn more about you, see a new side to you, and hear more of your stories in a longer form way. And then along the way, almost break down this story into tips and lessons you've learned that people can use for themselves. So I figured the best way is to rewind right back to the beginnings. I've written here early inspirations. Can you tell us what it was like in your house growing up from a food perspective? You talk a lot about being close with your mum and how much your heritage has influenced the way you cook and eat.
Yeah.
What was that like when you were younger?
So my mum is Spanish and Italian. Her father is Spanish and her mother, my nana, is Italian. So obviously we grew up with lots of incredible food around us. My mum is also extremely passionate about cooking. So whatever meal we were eating, it had so much love and care put into it. So I grew up with food being the main focus of our house. But surprisingly, I was not interested in cooking. I was interested in the eating part.
That's me.
Yeah, I was the one, being a bratty teenager, talking on MSN chat or MSN groups while my mum, nana and brother were cooking in the kitchen, trying to get me involved. But I'd be like, Mum, go away. I'm doing my own thing. Just tell me when the food's ready. But,
I relate to that so much. Oh, my God.
But that being said, I admired that relationship and that passion that they all had with food. There was something really special about it, and maybe I didn't realize it when I was younger, but it's sort of growing up and looking back at that and being like, that's really unique and really special if you can come from that.
And you also don't realize how enriched your life. I remember a lot of my friends are not Italian, right? I'm not saying that I'm a full-fledged Italian person, I'm third gen, right? But obviously having that culture of my nonna, growing up at nonna's on the weekends and mum's always cooking, we were always around good food. It was just normal. Yep. I didn't realize that until I started hanging out with my non-Italian friends.
Neither did I. And it's actually probably when I met my fiance, who isn't a foodie, but I kind of started to realize, he doesn't plan his day around food. Yeah. I'm like, okay, what are we getting for breakfast? And then, at 10 a.m. I'm asking, what are we going to have for dinner? And he's like, I haven't even thought that far ahead.
Correct. The whole system is food.
Yeah.
The reason I asked that is, I relate to you firstly very much in terms of the only reason I learned to cook as a kid, learn to be around food, understand ingredients, was just so I could be at the table or be involved with eating first. I always just wanted to put it in my mouth and try everything. So I would hey, Mum, do you need any help? Do you want me to carve up the roast lamb? I'll carve it up. Boom, eat the food. You know what I mean? You're around cooks. How did that influence the family? Obviously you're a mother, and we're going to get into that in the later stages of the podcast, but you said your life revolves around food. You didn't realize that your daily planning revolved around food. How did that influence your family dynamic? You speak about food being your love language. I'm sure you got that from somewhere.
Absolutely. It's my love language. I love cooking for people and showing them how I love them through food. Like my fiance's favorite meal is a lasagna. And when I make him that lasagna, this is me saying, I love you so much, because I've done a slow cooked ragu. I've done the bechamel from scratch. I've done the pasta from scratch. It takes me like a good day to make it, but that's me in my happy place.
I've put this time in for you. I've put this effort in for you. Here, enjoy.
Whereas he might show me he loves me by like taking the rubbish out. But
oh, what a sweetie.
He always cleans the dishes for me. But back to your question, like how it was a big part of our family life, food. It's just any gathering was around food, and it didn't have to be anything big like a Christmas lunch. It was even just dinner. I would go and I'd watch Mum making dinner, and I'd talk to her about my day, you know, if I was upset or happy. And it was just always at the center of our house was my mum cooking in the kitchen and my brother being there to assist, or me sitting there talking to her while she's stirring a big pot of bolognese, or while my brother and her and my nana was always around, you know, hand rolling croquetas, which was sort of their thing to do. And they would do it while speaking Spanish, which is so lovely. And, you know, again, me being the bratty teenager, I'm like, I don't want to learn Spanish.
That's me. I listen to Mum and Nonna speaking Italian all the time. Like, wow, that's so beautiful. What are you guys talking about? I've got no idea. And like they drift between English and Italian at the same time, and like apparently it helps them speak and communicate faster.
Yeah.
I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying, but like, you know, it'd be cool to be a part of this.
Yeah, I'm the same. My great abuela actually couldn't even speak a word of English, so I just go there and
sign language
and sit there. Yeah, like, what are we talking about?
So you're saying, just to almost bookend that section, the way your mum obviously showed you her love was she was always in front of a pot. Here, let me give you this, let me share this for you.
Yeah.
Was that her main way? Did you, obviously you're quite close with your mum.
I'm very close with my mum, and that was her main way of showing anyone that she loved them. Like when we were in our early 20s, I was living at home, and I think I just moved home from living overseas, and we called it like the unemployed club because I was like in between jobs. So any of my friends who weren't working or, you know, had a day off would come to my house, because my mum would love having people over because she could test her recipes on them. I
relate to this so much.
I remember one day, like, and you know, maybe I can't say this, but we'd been smoking weed, and like we all had
I didn't say that.
We all had the munchies, and like my house was the best house to have the munchies at. My mum, sorry mum, you probably didn't know what we were doing, but I remember one day she came around with 5 different chocolate recipes, and she's like handing them out, and everyone is so excited to take them because they're like, yes, like we've got some food to eat.
That's so, because you think about it, when you're at munchie stage in the average household, it's like, all right, let's go open the bag of chips, or like, let's find what we can. You got a full-fledged like 5-course meal ready to go.
Yeah, and then she's like, any feedback on this one? And like, any feedback here? And it's so funny to look back at that now, because I've turned into my mother in more ways than one. But
wow, that is special. Now, the next question I had was, speaking of the mum, and I want to get into the idea of legacy. Let's just get deep really early here. My nonna, and I've heard this from so many other Italian people I know, I remember it would have been like 10 years ago, we sat with nonna and wrote all of her recipes down on pieces of paper so that we've got them forever, right? She's taught mum everything she knows. Mum's taught me everything I know. Just not even in terms of recipes, just in fundamentals of cooking, right? I want to talk to you about this story that I've heard you speak about these croquetas, about a time where your mum got really, really sick, and it really opened up your perspective in terms of like, oh my God, like I've always been interested in eating. Yes, it's a big part of my life, but I don't really care about learning to cook. Holy crap. The first thing I'm thinking of when I'm about to lose her is I should have learned that recipe. That's her. Can you break that down for us?
Well, it's funny where your mind goes to in a time of tragedy, or a time of like trauma, because I look back at that and I'm like, I can't believe that's where my mind went. But for a bit of context, my mum was transitioning from moving from Brisbane, our childhood town where my mum's lived her whole life, to coming to Melbourne. She had just left my dad and she wanted to be closer to her family. So she was moving to Melbourne. She'd also actually met a man in Melbourne who she fell in love with, and they're still together, which is really beautiful. But we were in Sydney having a family holiday, because that's where my fiance's family is. And we were on Bondi Beach, and my mum was completely healthy, fit, the best she's ever been in terms of health. She just lost like 25 kilos because she started exercising again. Mm-hmm. And she grabbed her head and said, Daen, I feel really dizzy. And then she started to panic, and she's like, no, I feel really dizzy. And then she said she went deaf, and she's saying, I can't hear anything. And I'm like screaming at my fiance, like, hurry up, something's wrong. And my mum just collapsed on the ground. And lucky he was there, because he's running to her, and he actually caught her before she could collapse on the floor, and like the concrete floor, and like smash her head open, basically. Right. And
so it all happened very quickly.
It all happened very quickly. And this is on Bondi Beach, mind you. And we were there because my mum loves Bondi Rescue. And we were actually joking. No one drowned because we don't want to get on Bondi Rescue. Anyway, there we are with my mum having a stroke, and the Bondi Rescue team is there. Which we can laugh about now, right? But at the time it was very traumatic. And so we had the cameras there, and we had so many people crowding around us with their phones filming what was going on, which is really horrible. Yeah,
that adds a whole, I don't want to use the word texture like it's a positive thing, but it adds a whole other layer of just niceness to that. It wasn't
nice. But, you know, like through that negative like comment about that, there was really beautiful things that came out of it, which was there was so many people willing to help us. Like we had one guy run up to the top of the road to hail down the ambulance because he could see I couldn't really explain where we were. We had one guy run to the lifeguards, and it was Chapo, the Bondi Rescue lifeguard, who probably saved my mum's life because he put her on oxygen straight away, and he was able to help. But yeah, during that time, like there was so much going through my mind, but I just remember thinking I never got a chance to ask my mum how to make these family recipes of ours. Like, because I was working on the cookbook, and because mum was moving to Melbourne, we were going to work on the cookbook together, and there's a lot of family recipes in my cookbook. Garlic, olive oil, and everything else. Go buy it on
It'll be in the
.net.
description, guys. Click the link in the description. I actually bought the book. My mum loves the book. Sorry, continue.
Anyway, there's a lot of family recipes in it, and I just remember my mind going to that is that I've lost it now because my nana and my abuelo had passed away, and these recipes they were with my mum, and that's just where my mind went to, which I think is like a crazy place for it to go to maybe. But I think there's more of a larger context to that, which is I just hadn't had that opportunity because you think that your mum is going to be around forever, right? And my mum's still quite young. She's in her early 60s. And I just thought I had all the time in the world. And I think I was just reflecting on how angry at myself I was because I just had always thought my mum will always be there for me. And in that moment, I actually thought I was watching my mum die in front of me.
It's interesting that the vehicle of this story is, yes, I should have learned her recipes. I wish I, learnt the food. But really the overall message, which is, applies to everyone with their loved ones that they don't want to lose, which is like, yes, I wish I spent more time with them. I wish I explored that deeper connection with them regardless of what it was, right? Because you never know when it's going to be taken from you.
And you think you never think it's going to happen to you. Like you hear these stories every day, but it's always the neighbor, or a friend of a friend of a friend. This is never going to happen to me. And in that moment, I'm like, it's happening to me, and I just never thought this would. And I wish I had more time with my mom, and I want to ask her so many things, and I don't think I'm ever going to get that opportunity back. And
is there an actionable, I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory what the actionable piece of advice is, which is like, guys, if you love someone, tell them you love them, and make sure that you're setting aside time to be there while you've still got them.
And it's so cliche, right?
It
is so cliche to say, tell that person you love them right now.
And you know what's interesting? Sorry to interrupt. It's like there's this thing of human nature in general, and I'm guilty of it because we're having this conversation right now, and I love my mum to bits, and I would be a shell if I lost my mum, right? But even now in my head, I'm thinking, couldn't be me.
Yeah,
so it's interesting the way humans work with any issue or any big problem, which is like, where was I going with that, Daen? Like, until it's right smack bang in your face on Bondi Beach, even us saying this to people right now isn't really hitting the way it should.
And Why is that? Maybe it'll resonate with one person, but I just don't think it will ever, people will ever understand what it's like unless you're in that situation.
I don't want to go on a tangent here, but also now that you've still got your mum and she did survive the Bondi thing, have you found yourself slowly you're a busy person, you run a big business, you've got this career, you also have kids, you're building this new family. Are you slowly finding oh, call mum tomorrow.
No.
Okay, so you really learned the
Yeah,
lesson.
I see my mum twice a week. She lives about a 40-minute drive from me. So it is a bit of an effort to get there, but I make the time because I want my children to have that close relationship with her. I want to be with her as much as I can. Like I took her out for a lovely lunch yesterday, just her, me, and my 4-month-old. And we had the nicest time. And I was just thinking, oh, this is so nice. And I'm so glad we get to do this. Like, don't get me wrong, my mum still drives me absolutely crazy. But
So if we were to rein this back into you and cooking and just legacy and passing things on, is there anything you would say to the audience about, like, let's just keep it on food for this one, right? Learn the recipe, learn that piece of insight that you might not be able to get from a cookbook. I'm sure everyone knows something you should, if it's there, take it while it's there.
Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be about food, even though we're making it about food, but it can be about any legacy that someone close to you has. Learn it now and ask them those questions, because one day you might not have the opportunity to. And that was my biggest regret, is this mum's passion in life is cooking, and I didn't get that chance to sit down with her and talk to her about something that she loves so much, that I now love so much.
So speaking of loving things so much, I'm really trying to continue on with these speaking ofs, like that's my transition. I want to get into the part where, okay, yes, we've established it was a big part of your life, but now it's the part where you've now moved out of home. You're not having the amazing munchies experiences that get served to you on a silver platter, and it's time for Daen to start learning to cook. From my context that I've got, you were in a job that you felt very lonely in, and you were in Tasmania, and to pass the time, you would try and smash out a whole cookbook in a certain period of time. Can you talk to me about what that period was like? And thank you, Mum, for everything you've taught us. Thank you for these lessons, but now it's Daen's adventure.
Yeah.
You did this yourself. You're a self-taught cook, same as me, right?
Yep.
Sure, I know you did online masterclasses and this question's dragging on, but what was that ecosystem like of teaching yourself?
It was great, because for context, I had lived in Cambodia for 18 months because my background is in art history. I actually have an art history major, and I fell in love with contemporary Cambodian art and the history behind that. So I was finishing up at my job there. I was working in an art gallery, and I wanted to continue the adventure, basically. And living in Cambodia, there was a huge expat community, so you could easily slot in, make friends that were like family there. Expat, yeah. So people that aren't from that country, so had come from all over the world, but basically had no friends or family there. Yep. So we all became our own family. And then I got offered this job in Tasmania, and I thought, this is great. I'm going to continue that adventure. I'm not ready to go home to Brisbane. And I was painfully lonely. And it was a feeling I had never felt before. I just thought it would be like my experience in Cambodia. But, you know, when you're coming to a city like Tasmania, which is beautiful, by the way, most people are established there. They've got family, they've got friends.
They're not looking for new people, really.
No, and it's hard to make a way in without any in, basically. And so I'm working on an arts festival there, which I wasn't connecting with the people at work, and I'm starting to lose my passion for art. And I'm sort of getting at this crossroad where I'm like, oh, what am I doing with my life? And my roommates that I was living with at the time had all these cookbooks. And I remember one of them being a Diana Henry cookbook, who is my favorite cook in the world. And it's not just how she cooks, it's how she writes about food. And now
you sound like my mum. This is probably why she likes your book, because it's not really about the food, is it?
No, there's so much more to it. But the thing that she wrote about was the sound that food makes, which when I look back at it, I'm like, oh, this is probably what put me on this trajectory of ASMR, because I remember her talking about mussels, and she's like, it's not just about eating the mussels, it's about washing them and the clinking sound they make in the steel sink when you're cleaning them. And I'm like, oh, this is, I don't know, something
and
like
the metal spoon when you stir them,
something was lighting up in me. So I had all this free time in the world because I had no friends, and I would come home and I would spend all my money on ingredients to make these extravagant meals that my roommates, who I wasn't that close with, would walk home to, and I'd be like, oh, who wants, like a hand-rolled pasta and this and that, and they're like, oh, this is great, I'm going to eat all this food. But I found this passion was igniting inside me, and it was something that I hadn't felt for a really long time. And I was so excited by it that, you know, I was rushing home from work and to make these extravagant or quite simple meals. And, you know, my weekends were spent going to the fishmonger and talking to him
and making friends with them.
Yeah, I did. I made friends with the fishmonger. I made friends with the guy who owned the local butcher. They were my friends there. And
it's interesting the way that food will build community. Like when I hear that, you're speaking about like you've built this passion fire in your belly. You're giving me a fire in my belly just hearing that, because when I started my first business, which was a photography media business, right? It was the first time in my life where I wasn't in this social job or doing the same things as my social group. And I just remember sitting in my office by myself, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just by myself, just all day working. I just remember being so like lonely and sad, but I love what I'm doing, but I'm sad and da 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 da. As soon as I discovered food and really went down this path, mine wasn't through reading cookbooks, but it was, you know, I followed a lot of people on Instagram and I was like, oh my God, I want to try this, right? As soon as I started cooking again, suddenly I was like, well, I can't just cook for myself. I need to share this with someone. And then the more I cooked, the more I was then brought back around other people. And then similar to you, like, hey, I've made pasta. Does anyone want it? And make this. It brings you back around people again. And it sounds, I'm not going to say cliche, but like almost like a token comment, but I really mean it. I feel like food saved my life because like that period of just sadness that I was feeling, and it's probably the lowest I've ever been. As soon as I found food, I suddenly had this purpose again to like, I have a reason to come see my friends and not just work all the time. Oh my God, I get to sit at the table and appreciate what my mum's done for the first time in my life properly. Like food connects people. And the fact that you've done it to the next level, which is like, I'm going to make friends with my butcher. Yeah. Like, I am so into food that butcher, let's chat about this. Like
my fruit monger is like one of my good friends.
It's like a hairdresser, like just talk to him all day. So good. The next part of that, which is like, okay, you've found a passion in your belly. You're now slowly finding a community about it. You're smacking out cookbooks each week. Can you give us some tangible steps to the people that they might not be passionate foodies like us, but they're also people that are moving to Melbourne, right? Or moving to Sydney, or moving to a different place, or moving out of their home. They need to feed themselves. They're sick of the expensive way of life that it is. Any supermarket, everything's expensive. They're trying to save money. They're trying to pull their resources together and make things from scratch. What did you learn along the way of your cooking that's like almost served you in the long run, regardless of career? Like life skills, saving money. What do you suggest to people? What did you use to learn? I've just asked you 50 questions. Do you get what I'm trying to go with that?
No, I'm a bit confused.
To the people out there that are beginning their cooking journey, regardless of why, it might not be a passionate thing. It might be it's a survival thing or a saving money thing. Yep. You've taught yourself to cook, and that skill, regardless of your career, has probably saved you money in the long run. Yeah. Because you've made things from scratch. You've understood how to pull ingredients together from the fridge. What should people be looking for? Should they start with cookbooks? How did you learn?
Well, for me, like my biggest advice is always looking at high quality ingredients. So I know you're probably spending a little bit more money in the long run, but the health benefits and like higher quality olive oil, for example, has so many nutritional benefits for your health, and it's going to go a lot further than when you're buying cheaper meat or cheaper vegetables. Or, you know, if you're moving to Melbourne, for example, something great that you can do is go to the market. We've got amazing markets here. And if you go on a Sunday at 2 to 3 p.m. just before they're about to close up, the amount of deals that you will get is incredible. And then, if you're looking to cook, you know, we have so many resources out there now, which is so different to when I was growing up, when it was kind of just cookbooks or turning on the cooking show and watching Huey cook. But now it's like, you know, we've got social media. So there are so many ways for you to discover easy, simple cooking. And at the end of the day, I think with my cooking, there is a bit of a misconception that it's not accessible because I'm using really expensive ingredients. But I actually like...
You make them go further when you... Like if you buy the good stuff, it's the same with my mum and Nonna. Sorry to jump in there. But like... I've always believed in this idea that poor man pays twice. And it's regardless of being poor, I'm not trying to accuse anyone of being poor, but when you try and save the money and push pennies together to get this cheap thing, you end up not getting the result you were after and having to buy something again. When I hear you say buy nice quality olive oil, firstly, I bet you'll use it smarter. You won't just flitter it away.
Not. Yeah, you're conserving it because you're like, oh, I spent so much money on this. So, you're being a bit smarter with how you're cooking.
You get more out of the ingredients. Like I've started getting into this with my cooking. Like I'm so glad that I learned to cook and learned to pair flavors and that now I like trying to buy whole things instead of things that are already cut up for me. Like a whole chicken now instead of just getting the thigh, and like using that whole chicken for a whole, like the skill of cooking has given me an ability to make that whole chicken go further.
Well, there's so many things you can do with a whole chicken, and a whole chicken is so affordable, right? I can turn that into so many meals, which is a roast chicken for the family. We always have one breast left over. So my fiance eats half the chicken and my daughter and I eat a quarter. And then we've got one breast left over. So that turns into chicken and mayo sandwiches for lunch the next day. And then I use
soup I
use the carcass to make a broth, which is this nutritional broth that just anytime I eat it, I feel like my insides feel good. I feel refreshed, and I'm like, that's what I mean about buying better quality ingredients, because when I'm being a bit cheaper with meat and whatnot, I don't feel as good as when I am buying like an organic chicken. And look, sometimes I am buying the cheaper stuff because I don't have the money to spend on it, or I just don't want to sometimes. But if that is my best piece of advice to someone, it is just look out for something that has had a little bit more care and the ingredients are of a little bit better value to you than something cheaper.
Correct. And I think as well, guys, like if you're listening and you're about to go on the cooking journey, or you have a reason to begin, regardless of the tangible steps of, like, I know you're a big proponent of trial and error, and just do the trying, and you'll find yourself a year down the track with more tries and you'll be better because of it. And we'll talk about that with your social media journey. But for those of you who want to learn cooking as a means to survive better or look after the people around you, my suggestion would just be, like, again, sorry to jump into straight a cliche, but like just go and do it. Daen makes an amazing point of the resources.
This is the cliche show, right? We've had a lot of cliches.
Just do it.
But something else I want to say is that if you look at my recipes, sometimes there's only like 3 or 4 ingredients in them, and I can make a whole meal that will feed my whole family.
And the resources available to us, not just in terms of the ingredients, like in terms of like going online. Honestly, I'll admit this to you here, even 2 years ago, I wouldn't have known it was you at the time, but obviously you've had mega viral videos. Some of your avo toasts, I reckon I've tried. And you know how I did it? I didn't buy no book because it obviously didn't exist yet. I didn't go to your newsletter. She has a newsletter. Make sure to check it out. I didn't go to your website to find it out. I literally just watched your video. It would have been an avo toast. I definitely have tried one of your recipes, right?
Yeah.
Pause. Watch it, pause, watch it, pause. And I've just learned through watching a video, you can do it.
And it's not even following it to a T. It's just being inspired by it, where you're like, oh, she made mayonnaise and put avocado and slapped a tomato on it with some pickled onions. I can do that. Like, it's just to inspire as well. Okay,
so let's jump forward now. You've learned to cook. You've figured out the intricacies of self-teaching, right? I know you. The attitude of you was right in the sense of like, whatever resources I can summon, I'll use. If it's online masterclasses, so be it, anything, right? I want to get into your sort of tie this back in now. You've learned to cook. You've got your early relationship with cooking. Now you're beginning the online thing. And before we get into the intricacies of that, I want to talk about this idea because I know that you mentioned to me that back, sort of in your younger time, things were slightly different culture-wise to what they are now. You cook with a lot of olive oil. I was going to say you cook with a lot of garlic.
Do
Olive oil is your middle name. But
I need a T-shirt that says I'm the garlic and olive oil girl, because when I go to these events, people are like, oh, wait, who are you? And I'm like, oh, I do the garlic. They're like, oh, that's it.
You know how I explain? So everyone I've told that I've got you on the podcast, I'll say, oh, garlic and olive oil girl, or I'll explain with certain things, do you know this person? And then I'll go, and I make the olive oil, and they're like, oh, and like, you ever seen the ceramic little container, and then the garlic gets poured in, and then the and they're like, yep.
Like, I literally need a photo of that on a T-shirt that says, I am the garlic.
Do you like? Sorry, we've been cooking here in Melbourne, so I've got this crappy Woolworths. Do you like? Do you hear this sound? Like, is this?
You need the pourer. It's all in the pourer.
Because the air suction.
Yeah.
ASMR is a big thing
And
in my...
I know it to a T now. If my bottle's full, I'm going to get a really good sound. If it's a little bit on the emptier side, it's going to still have a good sound, but it's going to be a bit more mild.
Guys, if you're a social media content creator or you do what we do, like let's say you're a food content creator, stay tuned in because we're heading into the part of the conversation where there is actually an art to ASMR. Literally, if I show you what we were doing yesterday at the place we were shooting, microphones here. I literally had this podcast microphone next to the pan. And
I tried to fight it for so long. I'm like, I'm not jumping on this ASMR trend because I've got a fiance that works from home and we used to live in an old wooden house and you could hear everything.
Yeah.
I had a baby. This is my first daughter. I had my mum who was living with us. I had 2 cats.
It's so hard.
I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is too hard. And then it's literally like to the point now where I'm like, Aaron, shut the fuck up.
Bro, yeah, I'm the exact same.
I'm like, I need 10 seconds. And then it's like,
ASMR.
Go. All right, everyone go back.
Correct. Sorry, I've jumped us forward. Forgive my hosting skills. I get a little bit on a tangent. I want to go back to the relationship of food and how you navigated the ups and downs. Going back to the olive oil thing.
Yep.
Yes, so far, let's just jump into the social media side. You've had a lot of feedback about like, you use too much olive oil, the calories are horrible, blah, 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 blah. And you've mentioned to me, like even off camera, that some of these comments have really, really hurt you because of your past with like body expectations. I want to get into that topic because I know that body image and for everyone, it's something that I've gone through, like people's opinions of my body, and then this food thing that I love so much is also the thing that's causing me this negative feedback. How you navigated it as a passionate foodie?
Well, it's been really hard. So like I've been doing this for a few years now, and I'm definitely at a point where I can just shake the comments off. But I do have a shit day or two
here
or there.
What are the comments?
You know, it's all about the calories, how I'm going to be getting fat, how I am fat if I do show myself in my videos. Lots of comments about my body, how it looks or how it's going to look if I keep eating the way that I'm eating. And to be honest... From strangers,
by the way. From strangers on social media.
No one I know. And to be honest, if a video goes viral, I get thousands of these comments. Like I see people share these comments in their stories and, you know, there's like 1 or 2 that they're getting and they're really upset by that. And I totally get it. I'm like, I understand why you're upset. But then on my scale, it's like I get thousands and thousands of these comments. And as someone who struggled with their weight and their body image when they were younger, like I grew up in the 90s where it was cool to look skinny. Like we all strive to have a thigh gap where you have really skinny legs and you have a gap.
Which scientifically apparently isn't really meant to be possible anyway because of the way that I've read about this, like your hip structure.
And I'm a Mediterranean woman who has some hips. And I used to hate that about myself so much. But, you know, saying that I grew up with a mum who was always cooking amazing food, I would restrict myself from that. I would have photos of models on my pantry door or my fridge door that would stop me from going in to eat mum's spaghetti for dinner or eating her chocolate cake. I would buy extra small dresses, hang them up on the back of my door so I would remind myself every day, don't eat that, Daen, because you want to fit into that dress and you want to look amazing. You want everyone to be like you, you know, but that is not uncommon for girls in particular my age.
I relate
at
to
that
that
time.
as a dude.
Yeah, like it, for a lot of people. And we were all like that. You know, it's so horrible to say this, but we would look forward to when the 40-hour famine donation drive would come up because it gave us an excuse to not
fast,
eat.
Yeah.
Because we were all excited about how much weight we would lose.
And the issue isn't the aspiration for oneself. It's and the reason I relate to it, it's the obsessiveness about it, especially with your given context. I know it's not everyone. Some people don't have great food at home, but like when you're around so much food that you know you love and you want to eat it, but you're obsessed with this other idea, which means, this thing that... Sorry, Mum, I know you're trying to show me love right now and you've worked hard all day to make me this thing, but actually I've got a dress to fit into. It becomes so obsessive and it really, until I figured it out, obviously you did figure it out. Now the comments have come back to fucking haunt you. Like they're pissing you off.
Yeah.
But that getting out of that obsession is so hard because it becomes so extreme. I can't eat it all or I'm going to eat too much because I love it so much and I miss it. And I guess we're talking about the balance of just... things that it's almost sounding like addiction in a way. Like,
it is. Well, it's such a toxic relationship I had with food. Like I would be envious of girls at my school who had bulimia, because I would be like, I wish I had that self-will to do that. Then I could eat whatever I want. Or like envious of girls with anorexia, because I loved food so much. There's no way that I could do that. And that is just how incredibly toxic my thinking was.
And to some people
food.
who don't understand this issue, it might sound completely irrational, like what is wrong with this person that thinks this? But when you actually have that, it becomes so obsessive that you don't like I was the same way. Like I would look at my friends who could eat, like I'd be sitting at the table with them, and I don't know, maybe it's a genetic thing, or perhaps they secretly work out 50 times a day that I don't know about, right? But I'd look at them and like, oh, I hate you for being able to eat everything you want whenever you want. I have to watch you eat right now. And it just became so negative. For the people who do relate, before we go back to the comment side, or maybe we just skip this comment side because fuck that shit. I don't fucking know you. Anyway. How did you, for yourself, begin to change the narrative in your head? Because it is really all up here.
Well, we weren't going to go into the comments, but
fuck you.
You know, it actually,
sorry.
It actually, like, I was doing it before that, where I was trying to get this healthy relationship with food and try not to associate my self-worth with my body image, which was a really negative headspace I was in my teenage years and early 20s. But when I started sharing my food online, you know, I grew up with a Spanish and Italian mother who used olive oil on everything. And so for me, like, it was just how I was raised. It was so natural to me to get a piece of bread, drizzle some olive oil on it, and fry it up. That's how we ate toast. We didn't put our bread in the toaster and then butter it. My mum drizzled olive oil onto it and we fried it, because she would tell us olive oil is so healthy for you, plus it's bloody delicious when you do it that way. So like when I started sharing those videos, and it's funny because...
And that's culture, by the way. That's not some flavor choice. This is just what you grew up with.
And
it's
I
normal.
didn't even think about it, because that's just how I grew up. I kind of just thought everyone did it that way. And it's funny because I actually was going to fry it in some butter. And this is during COVID, when I started doing all these toast videos. And the reason I started doing them is because my mum got stuck in Melbourne for about 5.5, 6 months. So she was living with us, and she would take my daughter out for a walk, and they would be gone for about 45 minutes. So I would be like, okay, great. What can I film in these 45 minutes? And I would film toast. I remember right before Mum was about to go out for a walk, I was like, oh, I've been seeing all these creators make some toast fried in butter. I'm going to do that. And she goes, butter? Daen, who are you? We don't fry our bread in butter. We fry it in olive oil. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. We did used to do that. And because I hadn't lived with her for so long, I sort of, you know, had forgotten that's how she cooked for us. So she went on her walk, and here I am. I made an avocado toast and a pan con tomate, which is the grated tomato. So I did two. And it was the first toast video I had published. I remember editing it thinking, oh, it's so oversaturated, the light. I don't think I want to post it, because I used to be a huge perfectionist back in the day, which I've had to, you know, really scale back on. Anyway, and that's the famous sound where it went glug, 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 glug. And it went so viral, and
sorry.
And it wasn't my first video to go viral. I think it was my second. But the first one that went viral, I didn't get the comments that I got with this avocado toast. And that was a lot of people stitching the video. There was this one guy in particular who made a comment around the calories.
This is a caloric nightmare.
Yeah, he was. And he was like, you know, if you want to eat food like this, then you're going to be gaining weight and you're not going to lose weight. And I just remember being so confronted by it and thinking, oh,
hello to you too,
here
motherfucker.
I am, like, eating just an innocent piece of avocado toast with, honestly, it was this beautiful first harvest olive oil that they're like $40 a bottle. It's so incredibly delicious and nutritious for you. And then I'm getting these comments, and I was so confronted. And then like from that stitch, so many people were trolling me on the video saying, oh, the calories and you're going to get so fat and maybe you are fat and all that olive oil.
So it brought back all of the pain from the original.
It did. And I started fixating on them because this was my first experience with it. And I just didn't know how to handle it. And I remember just like starting to question myself again and starting to question my self-worth because I had just had a baby as well. And anyone who's had a baby knows that your body changes in ways that you're not prepared for. So I'm feeling like insecure about how I'm looking at the time.
And then you're getting bashed.
And then I'm getting these comments. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? It's literally half a slice of avocado on a beautiful piece of sourdough with some beautiful olive oil, and I'm getting ripped to shreds for it. But like, you know, out of that negativity came some really beautiful positive comments because it was people who were like, you know, this could be triggering to someone with an eating disorder. Like, we've got to be really aware of what we're saying around food and what people are eating, or, you know, like, you know, don't impart or impose your calorie counting on a recipe or a video where someone actually isn't talking about that.
So your getting hate scenario on social media almost became a case study for the culture to learn of like, maybe we shouldn't comment on what people are eating.
It did. And
you
honestly,
were the case study.
At the moment, at that time, I felt like the whole of TikTok was talking about it. Like, that's how it felt like in my little TikTok world. I had the calorie counters on this side, and then I had the body positivity, like eating disorder people on this side who were like, no, we don't do that. That's not okay. This could be triggering for this woman or for anyone who's reading the comments. It might set them 10 steps backwards, or it might make them have an unhealthy relationship with food. So it was actually this really interesting and important conversation that started on social media. So, you know, when I look at the positive of it, I'm like, I'm so glad that happened because it was so important for me to hear this other side of it because I was starting to spiral backwards.
Can I ask though, all in all, going back to the younger years of the mindset and the obsession that we were talking about earlier to healing from it to now we've got this case study where the world has shown its true colors of good and bad. Let's just take everybody out of the scenario for a second and just talk about Daen. Almost cycling back to that original question, which was to the people listening that are, regardless of whether they're 40 million views viral on one video that is receiving said hate, or it's just their close friendship group. What do you say to the people that are struggling with their body image and struggling with their internal narrative to get through those thoughts? Because either way, you've got your case study and you've also got the early days originally.
Yeah.
It was Daen who had to figure that out.
Yeah.
In here. What did you use? How did you get through that?
I stopped basing my self-worth over how I looked. And that
How did you do that? Sorry.
I stopped using words like bad, unhealthy, fattening, high in calories, and started looking things as nutritional versus not as nutritional for me. I stopped looking at food as treats because I had been good for a week of eating. You know, and I can treat myself with a chocolate now, you know, like I really changed the language I was using. And then as now a mother to 2 girls, I'm so hyper aware of that. Like, you know, I love my mum, God bless her, but she has always been so fixated on her weight. And I think growing up with that, I became fixated on my weight. And then she comes over, looks after my girls twice a week, and I can see her sit, like the other day, like she got out a loaf of bread and was reading the carb count on it. And I'm like, Mum, it's bread.
That's the culture these days.
It's got carbohydrates in it. And I've just like, I've had to sit down with her a few times and say, I really don't want to do that around my 2 daughters because I don't want them growing up counting carbs or counting calories. And you know, there is like, you know, you've got to be.
It takes the love away too.
It does. But then when, like, the thing is with that avocado toast is you couldn't have gotten healthier ingredients. So it's like, I don't ever want to shame someone for eating high quality olive oil and an avocado. And I don't ever want to shame someone for eating McDonald's because...
See, guys, the world's not black and white. Sorry to interrupt, Daen, but like it's... What she's saying here is, hey, depending on your diet, maybe salt is the enemy. Maybe fat's the enemy. Sugar's the enemy. Calorie surplus is the enemy. There's so many different ways to look at how food might be good or bad for you. But at the end of the day, if you're putting love into the cooking and you're just cooking what you believe in, sustenance. There we go. Here's a language change. fulfillment, sustenance, love. I
Yeah.
bet you, like, there's that story. Is it Warren Buffett or like some really, really rich dude in America, like big business? He eats McDonald's every day and he's like 70, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But he claims that by eating McDonald's every day, he avoids the stress of X, Y, and Z, and it's better for his lifestyle. All power to you.
Yeah, we're all different, right? If we had the answer for everyone, then we would have the answer,
Yes.
and we would all be on this same trajectory.
Correct.
But you know what? Sorry to go back, but I just want to say one last thing, which is for me to get out of that mindset, I just realized how unhappy I was when I was restricting myself. I became, and we said the word obsessive before, and I would become obsessive about it. And I'm like, I'm not happy, but I'm so happy when I'm eating food that I love. And so for me, it came down to this language of being happy versus not happy, and thinking, okay, when am I at my happiest? And I love food more than anything in this world other than my family. But like, I am so happy when I'm eating good food. So I'm like, why am I restricting myself of this? I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm in a good headspace. And then when I'm in this other headspace of restricting, I'm unhappy, I'm miserable, I'm constantly thinking about what I'm going to eat next that's not bad for me. And so it just came down to that feeling as well. Like, how does this make me feel inside?
To whoever's listening, the culture's thank you for saying that. The culture is thanking you for saying that. Like, that there is the actionable steps. It's the right mindset to have. It's just learning that dialogue of self-love. That's very, very special. And I think the perfect bookend to that topic. Let's get into the TikTok and Instagram side of what you do. This is where I relate to you most. Funny, actually, I relate to everything you're saying, that food journey and the self-image. Okay, anyway, ranting. There is a difference between someone who's learned to cook and is a great cook. There's a difference between a chef and someone who's a great cook and learned to cook. These are all different avenues and hats that we put on for our food. Me and you and me, the food social media content creator is a whole different realm. Now, you've done both, right? Everyone has to learn to cook first before you start portraying it, and then eventually you learn the art of learning as you're teaching and da-da-da-da. I've asked you, what I've written here is, firstly, just talking about your videos alone, what elements do you think contribute to the viral nature of your videos?
Well, look, whenever someone asks me, like, how do you do it? I guess what I say back to them is, firstly, I've been doing it for a long time. Like,
correct, reps.
Not like 20 years, but I think I've been doing it for about 5 years now, and I've been doing the filming part for maybe 4 or 3. Because when we started, it was all about photos on Instagram, right? TikTok wasn't even a thing, and neither was Reels. But I have learnt a lot to get to this point. It's not as if. And like, look, sometimes some people do wake up one day and they've gone mega viral. But for me,
slow burn. You were a slow burn at the start.
Yeah, I guess so. Like, because it was when TikTok came in and I jumped on that quite early that, and I started to see what was working. And for me, that avocado toast went viral. So I just jumped on that and I'm like, I'm going to keep making olive oil fried toasts.
I watched that whole journey before we'd even spoken, so I know what you're talking about.
Which feels like so long ago now, because I don't really do the toast as much, even though I got a comment the other day where I posted my first toast video in like a year, and he's like, oh man, like, can you make something other than toast?
Oh, shut up, man.
I literally haven't made toast in so long. But yeah, so I look at what's working and I jump on that. So for me, like,
in terms of recipe selection?
In terms of content. So for me, filming those toast videos, and back in the day, for me, it was all about growth. I wanted to grow my audience as largely and quickly as possible. And those toast videos would get me an obscene amount of reach.
And so you lean into it further.
So I lean into it because I'm like, people like that. Let's keep going with it. And like with my reels and my short form content, it's at a point now where I don't even have to think about it because I've been doing it for so long. I've got this.
It's muscle memory.
I've got these steps in place where I'm like, okay, I film like this. I can edit a quick one at the click of my fingers because I know what I'm doing. But now that I'm trying to focus a bit more on long form content on YouTube, I'm finding myself going back to this place of learning where it's hard to explain, but in my head it's like this puzzle and I haven't put the pieces together yet. So when I'm filming a long form content, my head is such a mess because I'm like, okay, should I put that camera there? No, put it there. Oh, like I'm filming that. Oh, I missed that part. But with the
you guys hearing Dane's gamifying this. And that's probably how you've gotten to where you are. When you play a game for a long enough period of time, you tend to learn the intricacies of playing said game. Yes, the new level of the game is long form content.
Yep.
But like what you're saying, you know, I've heard you speak about the idea that with your perfectionism, like you were so big on your lighting, and then it, like you said, it was photos at the start, and then you found your short form. You've tried and tribulated and tried and tribulated and tried and tribulated, and for someone who wanted to start, it'd be treat it like it's a long journey, not a thing.
You just have to start. Like for so long, I was like talking to my fiance about this long form content. And I keep going back to long form because this is the journey I went through with my short form. So with the short form, you can see the beginning to the end, and the end is I've solved the puzzle in my head, and I don't even have to think about it anymore. I can just roll them out. I know what I'm doing. But now that I've mixed up the content, I'm back to square one. And for so long, I was telling him, what if I did it this way? Oh, what if I did it that way? And he's like, just do it. He's like, just put it out there. And I filmed about 15 of them, and the one big mistake I did is that I filmed them in bulk and then I started rolling them out, because what was happening is I was getting feedback in the comments and I wasn't able to go back and change that. And there is so much that your audience can tell you about your content. And I'm really lucky that I've got this established audience from my short form content. So they're there to give me feedback. But I was so frustrated because they're like, oh, you're doing this, but I wish you would do that. And I'm like, well, I can't go back and change it now, but I can for these future ones.
Daen, I relate to that so much. Yeah. The next project that I'm probably, maybe by the time this is up, it might be out to the first batch of people. But like my early, I've got a community that I'm getting into the point of feedback. I've shot this thing that's taken me 3 months to do based on the feedback that I've got currently. So I have a feeling that this thing that I'm working on is really, really, really good, and the people will really, really like it. But just like what you're saying, I'm in this like situation of, oh my God, yes, it's great. Yes, I've put my heart and soul into it. Yes, it'll be, people will like it. But I've just spent 3 months without feedback doing this thing in bulk, doing this big thing in bulk, when really if I just, like you said, sort of drip fed it to the people that, like, you're sharing this to your community, and I want to get into community chat with you next, but you're doing it for you, but you're also doing it for these people that you care about, that you want to service, right? Yeah. This following of yours, these people who consume your content and try your recipes. I'm taking the advice from you right now, which is like the feedback loop is more important than just one big batch of feedback at a time.
Yeah.
The small little baby step iterations. Post one, find out the intricacies of that. Okay, adapt that thing. Post. Versus do a thing that you're guarding close to your heart that's really special to you based on your limited amount of knowledge. Put it out to the world and then get absolutely smacked because a big bulk effort leads to a big bulk amount of feedback, which then might actually set you back further because it was this, you know what I'm saying?
And it did set me back.
Back and forward.
It was a learning curve. And then I realized, wait a minute, I did that with my short form content, which is I would drip feed them out and I would take on that feedback, and I'm like, oh, I should have learned from that. I should have done that with the long form.
Along the way,
people would be like, hey, what if you made a toast with this? And I'm like, that I never would have thought of that. That's a great idea. Or hey, like, I love when you do this, but it didn't quite hit the mark. Like, and then even the trolls. I do read most of the comments. I went through. Oh God,
that's a lot of comments to read through.
Not all of them, but I'm up at night breastfeeding, and what am I doing? I'm scrolling on my phone. But even though some of them can be so hypercritical and not said in a constructive way, some of them are actually like, I'm like, yeah, I see what you're saying there. One guy was criticizing how I say the word just all the time, where I'm like, in my long form content,
just make sure to cut it up.
And then we're just going to fry it, and then we're just going to do this. And he's like, oh man, if I have to hear this woman say just one more time.
And we're just going to cook for 24 hours straight. No problem.
I'm like, that's a little bit mean, but now I don't do it anymore because I'm like, yeah, they've got a point.
Fair. So how does that okay, so the one thing that I've gathered, and I hope the audience understand it, is this idea of a feedback loop that's as quickly as possible. You want to, if you're gonna, I'm doing the winky face for those who aren't listening, fail. If you're gonna fail, right, make sure you're doing it quickly and repetitively to the point where you can grow from said failure along the way, versus one big bazooka. I call it firing bullets, not cannonballs.
Yeah.
It's like Battleship, right? You're not going to apply all of your resources to one area if you haven't had a hit, right? You do a hit and then you try and find the other areas of the battleship. How does that apply to releasing and publishing a cookbook, which based on my experience, I have an online book with the link in the bio. But
The
for
shameless
yours,
plug.
yeah, no, shameless. But for yours, this is a big published book that's in bookstores. You would have had to put a dedicated amount of time in. And yes, you have an idea of what recipes you want to choose. You have an idea of what you think your audience will like. And you had people helping you create the content and the writing and That would have been a couple of months at least before anybody saw it. How do you navigate the idea of, here's a big project that I believe in. Do I really want to just drop it into the world like this? Or should I do like a test launch? Like what was that like?
Well, I sort of knew what my audience liked from me. So I took that into account with the cookbook. I'm like, the cookbook is actually chaptered in so it's chaptered in sections that I have gone viral for. So there's obviously an olive oil chapter and then there's a garlic chapter, but then there's a butter chapter because I do a lot of butter recipes as well, and a lot of those have gone viral. There's a crumbs chapter for breadcrumbs and everything you can do with what I call my mum's famous breadcrumbs, because her crispy crumb chicken using those breadcrumbs was actually my first viral recipe. There's eggs because I used to do an egg series. So we really looked at what my audience liked and took that into account when structuring
So the
cookbook.
book's an accumulation of the past demand you've seen.
It's an extension of it. And there was also this big conversation around it is I wanted to do the family cookbook where I'm like, I want, my family at the table, all the recipes that we've gathered around. I want my face in it. I want my story told. But for the first cookbook, we decided, no, let's make it an extension of your social media and what people have liked seeing from you so far, which is the food. Like, people love the food. So it's all about the food. I've inserted myself through the writing. I love to write, so I really enjoyed that part of it. But first and foremost, the cookbook is about the food, and it's about the things that people have liked to see from me and how I've gotten to where I am today.
The things people like to see from you, which leads me to the next question, and this is a selfish question because my job is food content creation. It's the same, smaller level than yours, but I go through the same thing. And I've seen the transition that you would have gone through originally, which is, firstly, I cook for me and my passion, and I'm lonely in Tasmania, and I'm doing it because I love it, and there's a fire in my belly, and I fucking love my butcher, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the next stage, which is people are starting to like it, and I'm building a business out of this, and I need to cater to these people. And yes, my brand is my communication style, and the recipes I choose are my communication style, but I also want to serve this audience.
Yeah.
I want your advice as a bigger food content creator than me, which is, how do you navigate the food is mine. This is my thing that I love, that's in my belly. I choose to cook what I want. I want to share what I want. This is mine. But I also have a business to run, and business requires demand and understanding what your people want.
Yeah.
How much are you cooking for you anymore, Daen?
Look, I put a percentage on it. So it's around 60-40%.
60 them, 40 you?
60 me.
Oh, that's good. I feel like I'm 70-30.
Yeah. No, it probably used to be the other way around, but it's more for me now because I need to keep creatively charged, right? And I love garlic confit. It's my baby. It's brought so many people to my page, but I can't make it forever, right?
Yeah. That's not your personality. Your personality is not garlic confit. There's more to
there's more to me that I want to show, and I need to keep creatively inspired to keep doing what I do, because there's so much work that goes into it, and if you're not passionately charged,
100%.
what happens is the work starts to drop off because you're like, I just don't feel like doing it anymore. So yeah, I definitely do a little bit more for me, and that's just more recipes that don't use as much garlic confit. When I don't use it, everyone's like, where's the garlic? And then I do use it and everyone's like, is this all this chick ever makes?
Make up your mind.
Yeah. I'm like, I can't please anyone. But and I've started to do, I used to love doing it back in the day, but I've brought it back in as some storytelling. So I associate a memory with
That's
a
good
recipe.
way to do it.
Yeah. I really want to share that story about my mom having the stroke. I've just needed to find the right space to do it, because they're actually the stories I share, they're very personal, that they're quite vulnerable. The last one I shared was being in a really toxic relationship and how I developed anxiety throughout that, and how my friend taught me ways showed me ways to calm myself down. And I just remember it was this one day we were driving and I was having a panic attack because of this guy, and she wanted to go get chicken and chips. So whenever
I've seen this video. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And so whenever I make chicken and chips, I think of her and how she got me through that really hard time. So they're very vulnerable stories, but I love making them. Like I love writing.
And it's real to you and relatable to someone else. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And like, you know, some of them have gone really viral. I think the most viral one was about another ex-boyfriend who broke up with me like 2 days before Valentine's Day.
Oh.
And to make me feel better, my dad bought me a lobster because he knows how much I love seafood and food. And he put a little love heart balloon in its claw. But yeah, so like people loved that story. But yeah, they're very vulnerable. So they take a lot of time for me to write. There's a lot more time and effort that's put into them than the ASMR ones. But sometimes I prep myself where I'm like, oh, it's probably not going to go as
correct.
viral.
And that's part of the game. And it's interesting. I mentioned this 70-30 thing. I was thinking, wow, I was thinking in my head as you are. I was like, 70-30, is it really 70? Wow, I'm doing so much for them and not much for me. But then the idea of this game is that I love the game and the passion of it all so much that I come from a place of gratitude. Like I have this idea in my head, and a lot of social media creators, they're like scared of that lower performing video, especially if you've become addicted or used to these toast videos that are just going bonkers. Like that. Yeah, I used to. And then you post one video and it doesn't do well, and you're like, "Fuck, I'm stuck with this brand.
I'm gonna delete it. Like, I'm so embarrassed."
For me, I'm actually more grateful for the ones that don't perform well. Not because I learned to not do them again, but because like it just reminds me like, hey, despite the fact that one of my Instagram videos that I posted last week is on 17.9 million. Like it's huge.
Is that a chicken parma one?
No, it's a sandwich video, and it's the same. Oh yeah. Sandwiches are like my little cheat code, and chicken parmas are my little cheat code. But like, even when a video flops, I'm happy about it, and I'm flexing my muscle here because I feel like I'm training this muscle of do this thing for you because let's say I'm used to 100,000 views and I only get 10 on this one, right? I know this all seems jaded to the average person that's like, what are you talking about? 10, this is good, right? Yeah. I'm testing that muscle of I'm going to do this thing because I love doing it. And the 10,000 people who watched it are the ones I actually really want there. Thank you for being the 10,000 people because you're viewing me for who I truly 100% am when I'm not using sandwiches as a cheat code.
They're the real fans, I put it down to. They're the ones that stick around. They just love everything you put out usually. And they only have positive, nice things to say.
It trains me though.
Constructively criticism things to say. But yeah, I totally get that because I used to be addicted to the views and I'd be like, oh, that one only got this amount of views and is it over? Like I'm very dramatic. But now and again, I keep saying this, but I've been doing it for a long time that my headspace has changed. And now I don't even really look at that anymore. I'm just like, I love reading the nice comments and, you know, the community that those smaller performing videos bring because they can get a little bit when a video goes viral. And look, I love when a video goes viral as well, but that community gets a little bit pushed to the bottom and I don't see that.
I relate. So that 17 million view video that I did last week, I've gained, let's say 10,000 more followers on Instagram just in the past week, right? Most people be jumping for joy, rejoicing, but I'm thinking to myself, oh heck, that's 10,000 people that don't know who I am yet, that are now probably never going to see my videos again until I train up their algorithms or whatever. Yeah. But it's also now burying the people that I've slowly built across the weeks. Does that make sense? When you get this, we're talking really niche social media stuff.
It's more like in the comments, I feel. Like they're still there. You just aren't connecting with them as strongly as you would.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's just suddenly this crowd's gotten bigger, but like, hey guys, like, thank you for being here 3 years ago. Like, you know what I mean? Now,
but we love them all.
Well, we love them all. We love them all. The point being, just going back to the whole business side of this now, is you've learned to manage the reward system of social media. It's like poison sometimes, regardless of the business applications and the passion and the balances. It's like poison because it's these apps, they train us to, you know how it is. They train our brains to be addicted to it. You have bills to pay and a family to raise. We are not like the average people of like, there are a lot of creators out there that post recipes and get a lot of views, and I'm sure it helps their vanity. I couldn't give a fuck, right? This podcast has probably only gotten 300 views at this point. Who knows, right? What I mean to say is that there are still bills to pay and you've leveraged your business around this traffic. I wanted to ask you how you run your business and the way you make your income, but maybe a better question to ask is, you found this 60-40 balance of Daen's passion versus Daen's audience. But now there's another avenue, which is your income, and it relies only on the audience. What have you learned? Do you have any tips for people who run their own business? Balancing your life versus balancing the demand. It's not easy.
Yeah. So I think it's about being authentic. So when we say 60% for me, it's actually just, and 40%, even though like 40% is that viral content, it's still me being authentic to myself. And I think people will start to pick up when you're doing stuff for views.
Yeah, that's
and look,
true.
I'm not innocent to that. Sometimes I do it because I need a bit of a serotonin boost where things haven't been going well for a while. And I'm like, oh, I need something to do well to make me believe in myself again.
Yeah, it's so weird how that works.
I'm a very emotional person. But yeah, like I think you have to be authentic to yourself. And my biggest goal this year is engagement and trying to engage with my audience as opposed to looking at growing and views. Like I really want to get to know them. I want to value them as much as I can. So I sit down and I give time to responding to comments.
Community.
And building that community, which I do have this great community there, but I just want them to feel valued. And that's my way of showing that.
Correct.
So, and then in terms of turning it into a business, I've definitely multiplied my income streams because when I first started this, it was me just relying on sponsored and branded work. But now I've worked really, really hard to also have income streams that
you've built yourself.
I'm in charge of. Yeah. So if I'm having a bad month with brand work, I'm like, it's okay because I've got my website, which I run ads off, and I know that they can be really annoying. A lot of people tell me that they just want to jump to the recipe and not have ads. But, you know, if we're able to keep doing what we're doing, we have to have ads on there. That's just how it is. I would love to have an ad-free space.
100%.
But if I'm offering recipes to you for free, then there is going to be that little inconvenience of just having to scroll through a few ads.
Correct. And not just that, you've made it very, very clear that you're not just using food for virality and a quick cash grab. You said you've been doing this for 5 years minimum just on the social media side. You can do your best work because of the income. Yes, you've got a family to raise and there are real life bills to pay as well, but it's not like you're like, I've gotten this traffic stream and now a revenue stream. Let me take. This is a mindset of how can I give more?
Exactly, because when I first started this, I was doing it as a hustle on the side, which is how most creators start, right? Mm-hmm. And then I've turned it into a business, and I just want to keep doing it because A, I love it, and B, I want to give my audience the best recipes basically and the best content that I can. And to do that, I need to be making viable income to continue to do it. Because if I weren't, I'd have to go back to a 9-to-5 and then this would take a hit. But I've got my website and then there are social media platforms that do pay their creators, such as YouTube and Facebook. I don't know if you have any international audience, but it's a bit different in Australia than it is in America. Basically, Australian creators need to move to America because we don't make the money you guys do over there.
Or we build our own IP and not, because you know what, I've had this conversation, I talk to a lot of American creators, right? Yes, we aren't, let's say TikTok, we don't get paid for our views and all of this stuff. And yes, YouTube, it's a great thing to get paid for your views. But again, I'm almost glad that we don't have those blessings in Australia because it forces us to be better business people. Yeah. Because if creator funds ever do happen for people like us, I'm glad that we were forced to not rely on it in the first place. Yeah. Because then you're not stuck on the views train. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But but we do have it with some, which is Facebook and YouTube in Australia. And then then there's products, which is my cookbook would be a product. I'm actually working on a really exciting line of products at the moment, which
I feel like I can guess what they are, but I'm not going to say it.
What do you think they are?
If it's not a custom olive oil or some sort of custom, I'm trying to think of your top 5 ingredients. What were they? It was your mum's crumb?
It's not food.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Then I've got no idea.
Look, it's cookware.
Oh, that's even better. Yeah. Because you can be part of people's homes without them needing to try your recipe.
Well, I'm going to bring out a little line of mini Dutch ovens that are food shaped. Yeah. Genius. So I'm so excited for that to come out. But that's another way to diversify your income streams. So that's pretty much.
You don't got to worry about food regulations or expiries. Yeah. That's great.
But the biggest hurdle for me with products and just a huge learning curve has been being based in Australia But and I've been having a chat with a lot of creators recently, is we build our brand online, and through that algorithm comes a huge international audience. And there is a huge hurdle for us to get to that international audience when we're based in Australia. So for example, when I brought out my cookbook, it wasn't available or easily accessible for people to get overseas, which was a huge issue because most of my audience are overseas.
I reckon that's a policy thing.
Yeah.
Like, is it a policy thing?
It's just more like, you know, we're in Australia. Australia is my home. We're Australian centric. We focus and put our energy here. And it's like all in hindsight, right? And something I hadn't thought about is, how are people overseas going to get it? And, you know, we had thought about it, but I hadn't put a lot of energy into it. But then when I was living it, I'm like, this is so frustrating.
I wish they could have the book.
Yeah, like I wish they could be in bookstores over there, or they could just jump on Amazon and buy it. But yeah, so like it's things.
So supply chain issues and delivery.
Yeah, which is something to think about when, you know, if you're looking at bringing out a product and you are based in Australia, and just looking at your audience and where they're based, because there is a big roadblock to like half my audience getting stuff. It got to a point where I kind of just had to stop talking about it, because if I were on the other side of things and someone I loved kept talking about buying something but I couldn't, I'd be like,
frustrating.
Shut the fuck up. I've asked you 10 times how I get it and I can't get it. So like, yeah, there's a huge learning curve around that as well.
I think in Australia, just in terms of business, like you compare ourselves to America, especially in the media space and like the product space, like
we're a little baby.
We're a little bit behind, but that's why
we're tiny.
That's why my book's online, Daen, and that's why the next book's online, because for me and my resources at the moment, more scalable, and then maybe I'll get to publish later. Now, income, tick. Boom, bum, boom, boom. I want to get onto the mother side, because there's a reason you're doing this all. Yes, of course, creative expression. Yes, of course, you're clearly a driven person, so you were going to do this either way. But you have kids to fend for now. Yeah. What's it like being a mum? How's life changed for you since becoming a mother? You're seeing the lessons your mum taught you. Now it's what's life like now?
Oh, I love being a mum. Like I always wanted to be a mum. I absolutely love being a mum. I just had another baby. She's very fresh. She's only 4 months old. So when I had my first daughter, who's now just over 3, Dane's kitchen wasn't where it is now. It was still that hustle. It was actually, it actually worked out really well, the timing, because I was able to go on maternity leave with my 9-to-5 job, and then I was able to like really commit to this, because I had my mum living with us as well. She was helping so much. And then
shout out mum, what a weapon.
Shout out mum. And I had the security of a job if this didn't work out. But, you know, now this is my full-time job. It is my business, and I've really struggled having to accept to scale back on things, because I just don't have the time. Like I'm tired. I'm trying to keep a little person alive and happy. And another one, my 3-year-old, she's so independent. I'm like,
she's already mothering the younger kid.
Yeah, she's already mothering the little one. But like I have found that a huge struggle in terms of being a working mum.
Business you wants to smash shit out, but then mum you's like, brother, you got to slow down. Like
I had to slow down. And it's funny because when I never stopped working, but you know, from like, you know, I remember coming out of my C-section, and I had my phone in my hand and I checked my YouTube, because I like had just posted a long form video. I'm like, oh, I wonder how that's gone.
Oh my God.
I was like,
respect. That is real hustle, guys.
I was like, dang.
Someone chucked my phone. I need to see my metrics quickly. Wow.
It was just subconscious, honestly. I'm so used to just always opening it up. But I never stopped working when I had her, and I felt a lot of judgment when I would tell people I'm still working, and they kind of
like, you're a bad mom. No.
Yeah, like just like, shouldn't you be in bed? Like, shouldn't you be resting? And I'm like, well, this work makes me so happy that I tend to turn to it in times of like when I've had a huge uproot to my life, or, you know, for example, when my mom had a stroke, I was so miserable, but I kept working because it makes me happy.
Me too.
Yeah. And like when I had my daughter, like life was so chaotic, but my time was, you know, just having a bit of time in the kitchen filming, or sitting down writing a recipe, something like that, just something that makes me happy. But yeah, like I wouldn't have it any other way because I've got these two gorgeous, gorgeous girls, and I've had to put some boundaries in place. So I have both of them 2 days a week. I try and work 2 days with my mum there, but I'm still with the baby. And then on the weekend and on those 2 days, I don't do work unless we're working on a Saturday. But there's those rare occasions where I'm like, oh, I will like do a bit of work. But on those days that I've got the two of them, it is no work, and it's actually saved me getting into those different headspaces.
You probably do better work now because of those 2 days.
Yeah, when I first had my first daughter, I didn't have those boundaries in place, and I was living in a constant state of frazzleness. I was just this frazzled person, like, oh, I've got to send that email. Oh no, like Indy's crying, I'm going to go over to her. Like, it was just horrible. So now it's like, put the phone away, enjoy my days being just a mum, not Dane's kitchen. And then on those work days, it's like I treat it like a 9-to-5 job. I used to work 3 full days a week when I didn't have my second daughter, when my first daughter was in daycare, and 9 to 5 I'm working, and then just how anyone else would do it.
Mothering aside, what do you hope for your kids / what have your kids already shown you about your past / childhood that you don't necessarily wish for them or do wish for them? What's something that like you're looking at them growing, you're like, or maybe you don't remember when you were 3 and 6 months, right? But looking back, you're like, I hope this for them. I see now as I'm raising these kids that this lesson my mum was trying to teach me, mum says this to me all the time. She goes, you wait till you're a parent. No. Like, shut up, mum.
I get that. Apparently I was a horrible
teenager.
My mum's like, I hope you get what you gave to me.
Correct. What have they shunned back at you? Like shined? What have they shined back at you? What do you see now?
Well, it's funny you asked that because just this morning we were like screen sharing my phone to the TV, and like, it's the modern day family album, flicking through the photos. And I had this photo, well, my fiance had it actually, of my daughter at daycare holding up. It's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I actually hadn't seen it. And it's like, I want to be a chef. And I was like, oh my God, that is the cutest thing. It melted my heart.
Aww.
And I was like, she must really look up to me, and like we love our days of cooking together. Like, she's got a little like that little wooden kid stand up on the kitchen, and we usually bake muffins,
gets involved,
banana bread, and we love doing it together. It's our little thing. So that made me really happy. But something that I really want for them is just to really to foster who they are. Like, I never want to push them or force them into something. I really want to find something that makes them happy. Like, for example, with my eldest, she loves fashion and she loves drawing and she loves baking with me. So all
creative.
We sit down and we think, how can we foster this into something so positive for her? Like, she's obsessed with her princess dresses. I think most little girls are at that age, but she is obsessed that it controls our life. So we're like, how can we actually turn this into a positive? Because she loves it. And
like funnel that energy into something.
Yeah, like, and my fiance, he's out at Bunnings at the moment buying her like all these canvases and paints because she wanted to paint today, and we're like, let's do that today. Let's get you painting. But I really just want to find who they are and really foster that for them. And yeah, like, if they show an interest in something, then yeah, let's go for it. If you're not into it anymore, let's take it away and then, try something else.
I think that advice applies to everyone in the world, everywhere, anytime, any age as well, because like, I don't know what we're here to do as humans. We're on a big spinning rock and we're all going to die. But I like the idea that, like, at least before you die, figure out who you are.
Yeah. And I just want them to be kind, nice people. I always talk to them about being kind and how important that is. And, what you put into this world is what you get back.
Nice. Well, this is a good little period of time for the ending part of the podcast. If we were to apply anything else, I'm gonna close the laptop. This is the most probably crappy and macro question of the whole podcast, but I'm gonna throw you in the deep end anyway. On that same trend of like, what do you hope for? Taking the kids out of it now. Let's just speak to the world. What does the world need more of? What do you think the world could benefit from having?
Kindness, I guess. Like, the internet can be a really hateful, toxic place, and if I'm not in the right headspace, it does consume me in a negative way. But I always try to think of the positives and the beautiful things that come out of it. And, you know, it's this beautiful community I have on there. And, you know, like it's been a great platform to allow me to do what I want to do. So, you know, I just wish there was more kindness out there, because I think these keyboard warriors forget that there's a human being behind the content that they're seeing. And we do read the comments and we do have feelings and they do hurt us. But at the end of the day, I just try to put stuff out there that makes people happy. And, you know, there's something about just having this safe space where it's like, it's just food that will make people happy. You know, you don't have to like it, just scroll on through and don't say anything. But yeah, like I think the world, it's a scary place at the moment. We have so much information out there and we're so connected to each other that it can be really scary in a way. But, you know, I think through that, there's a lot of kindness that comes through. And it's like going back to that day my mum had her stroke, which is, you know, there were all these people on their phones, but through that, there were a handful of people that just showed how incredibly kind people can be to a stranger. You know, like one lady gave us her blanket for mum to lay on, and I never actually got a chance to give that back to her. And I think about that because I'm like, that was such a beautiful thing to do. And
there's hope.
And then, you know, like at the hospital where I was a mess, this nurse just gave me a hug and I just cried into her arms. And I'll always remember her because she kind of just, instead of having that stoic medical black and white response, she kind of there was love and care, and she just saw that I was a human being feeling something and I needed that. And it was just, I think we need more of that.
I think that's a very positive message to land on. And the main thing I've learned from this podcast is that you need to do more long form shit, because you've got a very rich story. And I mean, I've followed you for a very long time with cooking, but there's so much more to everyone. And I'm glad that we had this chance to share it. I know I'm younger than you, but I feel like such a wanker saying this, but like I know
I'm not that old.
I know you've got a bright future ahead, and that's weird coming from a kid. But like I really enjoyed this conversation, and that was that. I mean, guys, this was the Mouthful with Marcus. This is Daen, Leah, Kelly. All of her links will be in the description. If you want to learn how to cook, look, I can teach you, but she'll probably be better for it. So go check out her page. You kicked ass.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. This was great.
And cut. That is it.